Good morning. It's Steve Halleck of TickTocking, and I'm going to try a live podcast episode. So what I'm going to do today is discuss a little bit of what I'm seeing in the current luxury watch market, pricing, all those things. We're going to get into the macroeconomics a little bit, the micro world of watches, and kind of what's happening. Then I'm going to shut down this current live chat, and I'm going to open it back up to a full Q&A. That way we have two videos that can kind of live on their own and people can check out whatever part of them actually interests them. So let's talk about the watch market. I think for anybody who's been paying attention, the main thing you're seeing in terms of prices is that they're basically going, as the Bitcoin people like to say, to the moon. So watch prices are just a little bit crazy, but that doesn't really tell the entire story. So first, I want to start with what I'm seeing just in the kind of macro economic environment. I'm not an economist, although I did go to school and I know some things. I like to read. I don't have data other than what I read and what you guys have seen. So this is just kind of my own personal distillation of what I'm seeing out there and my kind of guesses as to what's happening. On the macro front, I think what we have is actually, maybe you guys have heard of it, something called the Cantillon Effect. And I've been reading a lot about this. It's pretty interesting. So the idea of the Cantillon Effect is that basically inflation, as we understand it, for anybody who took a finance class or an econ class that dealt with inflation, the idea was always that if you put more money into the system, basically if you print money, then prices will go up because prices you basically have more of a supply of dollars or whatever kind of money it is, and so more supply means lower prices. So this doesn't really tell the entire story. And there was an economist whose last name was Cantillon or Cantillon, I'm not exactly sure, Cantillon. And his sort of theory was that the money actually impacts people differently depending where you are in the monetary system. So in our current economic world of central banks, the central banks print the money and it goes basically to banks. And then the money gets out via credit. Well, I think that what we're seeing is this Cantillon effect, because what that ends up doing is the people who are the closest to this money and credit system get the money first. And so they have their net holdings of dollars or currency or debt, which gives them dollars or currency, assets in general, go up. And with that, they buy assets. And so you start seeing asset prices increase. And we're seeing that in the stock market. You're seeing that in real estate. You're seeing that in crypto. You're seeing it kind of everywhere. Everything on the asset level is more expensive. Of course, they'll tell you that there is no inflation because the way that they measure inflation is with basically consumer indexed goods. And that's a whole other thing. And you can watch a ton of other YouTube videos where they get into the kind of CPI and all the shenanigans that go on there. But the part that we're really concerned about in terms of high-end watches is this initial part where money gets into hands of people kind of from the top down, right? The inevitable fact of this in general is by the time the money actually gets to people sort of lower down, then the basically prices have inflated, so they don't really see any benefit of it. But again, that's neither here nor there. Point being, I think if you yourself are on the wealthier end of the spectrum, or if you know a lot of people that are, you know that people are pretty flush with cash right now. And that's basically the beginning part of this Cantillon effect. And you can't help but see this, right? It doesn't take a genius. You don't have to know what this effect is called to get it. You see that central banks are just pumping currency into these markets. And we all know where it's going, basically, right? So in the US, if you got a stimulus check, right, you got $600. So that's at this end. But if you got a PPP loan, you could have gotten 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, a million, 2 million, you know, tons and tons of money up here, all the while the banks and the central bank are actually buying assets. So you're seeing the stock market increase, which, you know, generally helps people at the top part of the income stratas, right? So this is going on. This is not a value judgment. I'm not a central banker. I have my own thoughts. Doesn't matter what's right here. I'm just saying what is, right? So people who have a lot of money, kind of the more money you have, the more money you have right now. And we're starting to see that put into every kind of assets, and watches are one of those assets. So people are more flush, and so you have more dollars in there, or whatever currency, but I know dollars better. You have more dollars chasing these assets. Okay, so that's what I see on a kind of macro level. And from that, we can expect a general price increase in watches, which is kind of what we've seen. Okay, now let's go into the micro world, which is our little crazy watch world. What are we seeing here? So here is where you get this effect of more dollars flooding in. And now it actually gets a little bit disjointed and broken up, because what I'm seeing is you have also social media and these sort of new technologies of communication coming in, and they are greatly kind of tribalizing the market and market preferences. So not only are there more overall dollars chasing watches, they're chasing all kind of the same pieces within the sphere. You know what I'm saying? So it used to be, you know, I got into the watch game in the very early 2000s, and back then forums were kind of the main way that a real watch nerd would get information. But forums were actually pretty varied in people's tastes. It wasn't uncommon to see somebody posting a Ulysse Nardin, Girard Perregaux, a Corum, a, you know, this, that, or whatever, all these different brands, right? Well, now you have such immediate response and such a kind of, you know, even the algorithms, as we know in other walks of life, kind of foment this herd behavior that you really don't see a lot of other brands. When was the last time you saw a Ulysse Nardin pop up in your Instagram feed, or God forbid, a Corum or something like this, right? So all these new dollars, they're all chasing, instead of the overall watches, you have real winners and losers. So now you get extreme price fluctuations of the winners, whereas the losers are at best flat, if not knocked down even further, although they had been pretty knocked down before. So I think this is kind of generally what we are seeing. And then it's a question of what are the winners and what are the losers in this. Now, from my point of view, of course, I'm mainly concerned with the independent watch market, and that's my main area of expertise. And I think that overall, the independent watch market has been a big winner in all of this. That maybe due to the fact that people have more time on their hands at their computers to do research, and they're finding these things. Ultimately, I think it's due to the fact that the independent stuff is just the good stuff. So the more people get into watches, the more they do some research, the more that they see that this is where they actually want to spend their money. And of course, it snowballs. So as you see a brand like FP Journe, where basically anybody who bought a Journe before 2019 has made a huge amount of money. They got very liquid. So people realize that it is possible. The old wisdom of the fact that independent brands were illiquid and you lose all your money when you buy one is just really not true when you buy any of the good stuff. And that's been proven over and over again by, most of these brands that I sell. These are the foundational brands. They're not going anywhere. They're pretty old now. Some of them are 20 some years old. And they've proven themselves in the market. So you have that happening, you have people finding them, you have overall more money coming in, and it all comes together to kind of perpetuate this snowball cycle where most of the independent brands are going up. Now, just like in the micro world of watches, there's the even sub-micro world of independent watches, and there you have, again, super winners and losers, right? Now, super winners, obviously I mentioned Journe, super ultra winner. You've got a lot of the sort of super indie guys. Philippe Dufour, obviously, major winner. Roger Smith. I think Kari Voutilainen starting to see it a little bit. And then you have whatever the next brands are. So I'm already seeing, like I have on my wrist, a De Bethune DB27. These have almost doubled in price in the last year or so. So you start having it in brands like this. All of it is coming together. So why is this important? It's important for a couple reasons. Number one, when you see prices go up like this, anybody who's price sensitive at all, which is honestly most people, people have this idea that the really wealthy people don't care what they pay for things, but I deal with really wealthy people all the time, and they generally care. They don't want to get ripped off. They're not wealthy because they're stupid. So the first thing that I'm thinking because I think through these things all the time, I have to buy and sell and figure this all out. So first of all, is this a bubble? Is this price inflation unsustainable? And while in the beginning I thought that maybe it was, at least in the medium term, I think that it's absolutely here to stay. And that gets all the way back to the macro elements that we talked about before, and the fact that I just don't think that's going to end anytime soon. And so you're going to still have more money supply, inflated assets all over the place. The rich are going to be rich for a while here, right? So I think that you are going to have inflated asset prices for quite a while. In addition to that, I think that this move where the independents have been sort of legitimized and people feel more comfortable putting their money into these is absolutely here to stay. So this was sort of an initial inflating of something that had been relatively undervalued for a long time. Part of the reason why I started TickTocking in the first place was because I personally believed that these independents were the best thing and that people didn't realize that, and that they were undervalued because of that, and that basically by doing these videos, by espousing the benefits of these kind of brands that I love, I could help people find these things, and there was money to be made in it as well. So it was a virtuous circle. It's something that I care about. It's something that I think matters, and I can make some money there because I believe they were undervalued. So now that part of it is solving itself. People are finding these things. They're getting close. I still don't think they're there yet, but they're getting to where maybe they should be or should have been. So really, I think it's important to separate these things, and they happen to be happening at the same time, and they do obviously play into each other. But the bottom line is, the one I think is completely permanent. People have realized that independent watches are kind of the shit, and they're here to stay, and they're the really good stuff, and they are not a death sentence to your watch account. They are more liquid. You've gotten way more dealers come into the area and feeling comfortable trading them. There's plenty of pieces that come out now that trade pretty close to retail, even pre-owned. So this has been happening, and people are seeing it happen, and every time it brings more people in here. At the same time, this macro climate is here for at least a while. I think any expert who's looking at it would agree to that. So bottom line is, I think that we're all pretty safe at current prices, even in the general thing. But again, I think the indies are even better positioned for this because they're not solely relying on this macro trend. They also have their sort of proper inflation of where they should have been coming into effect too. So I hope that makes some sense. This is how I'm seeing it for right now. This is why I'm still buying watches. I feel comfortable holding inventory, and I am advising people who ask that this is kind of how I feel about it. Unfortunately, a lot of the stuff that I like to buy is just kind of gone out of reach, and so that's unfortunate. But what it does say is that there's always bargains to be found, right? While everybody's focusing on Journe, you can come down here and find De Bethune. Or right now, I think that Grubel Forsey is actually a little bit slept on. Obviously, they're out of most people's reach anyway. But there are always these brands that get out of people's consciousness while they're focused on something else. And so if you want a relative bargain, you can kind of go here while everybody's over here, go here while everybody's over here, then it moves a little bit, you can adjust, you can do whatever. All comes back to, of course, trusting your own taste, maybe listening to my taste or whoever else you like their taste, give a little bit of guidance. But I do think that overall, we're in a pretty good spot with the market, with being comfortable being in this market, way, way, way better than we were sort of a year ago or 11 months ago, because things have stabilized out, and now we can at least figure out what's going on. And I do think if you keep coming back to this idea of what's going on in the macro, what's going on in the micro, how do the two work together, and are they likely to end anytime soon, you'll really be able to figure out if you're comfortable playing in this market or not. So I hope this was somewhat useful. I hope I didn't just tell you guys what you already know. Anyway, let me see if there's a couple questions on this topic itself, and I'll try to answer them. But after that, I'm going to cut this, and I'm going to come back on and just do a full open Q&A on any topic that anybody wants. So let's check it out. Da-da-da. So here... Yeah, so this is a good point. People ask me a lot about what about these certain brands. So there's like a what about Lane, there's a thoughts on Habring, thoughts on Reshep in terms of future, I don't know, price potential or something like that. And while I do like to think about these sort of bigger concepts on the market in general, I never know what brand is going to be the thing. I have no idea. If I did, I wouldn't have sold the 38 Journe tourbillons that I sold. I've several customers that have made more money off of one watch that I sold them than I've made off all my time selling Journe. So I don't really like to comment so much on my thoughts on any specific brand or any specific watch and its future potential. I just like to look at what's happening and then think, okay, in this world, what do we think? But who knows what the heck people are thinking and what sparks somebody to realize how good a Grubel 4C is compared to a Patek Philippe, or how good Kari Voutilainen is compared to Philippe Dufour, or, I don't know. If I knew that, I'd be so rich that I wouldn't have to talk to you guys. All right, let's see if there's anything else here. I think that that's about all we need to do on this topic. I'm going to pop this up as a podcast a little bit later. I'm going to leave this on YouTube so that when I'm wrong several months from now, it's still here and you guys can make fun of me, or when I'm super right, you can tell me that I'm a genius. I hope somebody learned something. Go check out, actually, the Cantillon Effect. Read about it. It's pretty interesting. Look at the consumer price index and all the economics behind that. If you're interested in it, there's pretty interesting stuff, and it can help sort of shine light on what's going on in the world. But that's it for now. I'm going to come back in a couple minutes and do a full Q&A with you guys. So hold your questions. Just stay here. Come back on my channel. Thanks a lot.